Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Pro Series Podcast. This is episode 82 with Britnie Turner. Britnie is a serial entrepreneur. She's a speaker. She's an author. We talk about really everything in this episode. It was such a fun episode. For me, just to listen to her story. Her story was incredible. You need to listen to this if you just want to be inspired by just an entrepreneur that really worked her way up. It's really cool if you go on to YouTube or Spotify and actually watch this episode. She is shooting from her own personal island, and she kind of shows the view, which is a lot better than the view I have right now in Pittsburgh. But it's beautiful. It's such a fun episode. Get inspired by this episode. But before we get into this episode, please like, subscribe, and review this podcast on wherever you listen to podcasts. And now I hope you enjoy episode 82 with Britnie Turner.
Awesome, Britnie. Thank you so much for hopping on the Pro Series podcast today.
Thanks for having me. Really excited to be here.
Yeah, and those who are listening to this and not watching this on YouTube or on social media, her background is making me very jealous right now. She showed a little bit of the ocean and stuff where she's seeing. Oh, she's gonna do it. Like, look at that. As I said in Pittsburgh, and it's like 40 degrees and rainy.
Oh man, it was a little windy today.
Oh, yeah, that sucks.
The water was super blue. I don't know, kind of hurt her eyes.
Oh my gosh, the complaints. Let's start with the island. How did that all start? Aerial BVI, is that what we call it?
Yes.
Okay.
We can't start with the island because it didn't
No?
start with the island. No,
Okay.
but,
Well,
it's
bring me to the beginning then. How did this all start? I mean, you have many businesses. Which is one of the reasons why I wanted you to come on. Your content's very inspirational to not just entrepreneurs, just any type of business owner or someone striving to be a business owner. So tell me how it all started.
so I wanted to be a missionary in Africa since I was 12.
Oh,
And
okay.
that was my driving purpose. That's what my identity was built around. And I just wanted to know what's the most effective way to survive in Africa and be an effective missionary when my real goal was to stop kids from being sex trafficked. I found out about that issue at 12 years old, and I realized that um, I'm so fiercely blessed that that's not my life, but I'm also so fiercely blessed that even though I grew up in a very America poor home, our problems are just so different. And the fact that I can Google my way into wanting to learn anything is,
Mhm.
to me, comes with a really awesome responsibility to be able to provide for more than just myself and my family. And so at 12, that's what I decided I wanted to do. And that's a passion that really burns inside me. And so I worked 5 jobs at a time to save up money to go on mission trips every summer. And I thought it would be this beautiful, cathartic experience of holding the child and like the sun is shining down. And it wasn't like that. I was just getting more and more pissed off. And I was pissed because I kept seeing that the level of need was so great. And it was overwhelming, to say the least, how many people needed help and were suffering beyond what I've ever seen. And I always served in tough places. And so I just had never even grasped like what people live with day to day. And so I was pissed because, yeah, we were feeding kids or we were going to orphanages and serving or building schools, but we weren't solving the problem. And at 17, I went through a survival school led by Green Berets. And our culmination exercise was we were dropped off in Costa Rica and told, like, go create value, go like find a way to help these people. And that's where I met a little girl that had been so horrifically sexually abused that she was physically handicapped, like, and couldn't even speak. And so it was horrible. The more I dug in this specific village, I found out that 1 out of every 4 babies died before they turned 1. Before they turned 1. And then it was socially acceptable, like, oh yeah, it's just what happens. Like, fathers do break in their children and sometimes they die. And I'm like, no. So that night I went back to my tent and I got on my knees and I said, God, whatever it looks like, I want to be the one that comes back here and does something about this. And that's what I heard loud and clear. I'm going to take you out of the mission field. I'm going to put you in business. And I was like, no, anything but that. Cause like, to me, business is like people who wear suits and they're stuffy and they're like cold and on, Wall Street. I don't know. I just had this terrible image
Yeah.
of cold, stuffy, corporate-y business people. And
Mhm.
it's so bad. But I'd always I'm wilderness trained, survival school, all this stuff. Like I'm just a tough girl like that. And I love that stuff. So I immediately complained, but that was all I heard. And so I went back to America, and I remember that bus ride home through the mountains. And I was like, if you're really going to make this not a socially acceptable thing, that infants die, as your sex toy, like so horrible,
Yeah.
then I'm going to need more than $20 in my bank account probably. And
Mhm.
when I got back, I used to hate rich people too. And this rich guy was coming in to teach my class, and I was like, ugh. So I skipped class. And then I didn't realize, like a really good student, I didn't realize that he was teaching for multiple days. And so I was like, fine. I ended up stuck in his class because I walked in. And he ended up teaching really the rich dad, poor dad concept from Robert Kiyosaki and Sharon Lecter of buying cash flowing assets that if you buy enough of those, you don't have to ask anybody for money and you can live doing your mission. And I was like, I really like that concept. And so at 18, I bought my first house, and it was because they lent anybody money in 2007. I was a waitress. You should never have given me a loan, but they did because everybody qualified back then. And in the process of buying it, I heard about this thing called flipping houses. Have you ever heard of
Mm.
flipping houses?
Oh yeah.
I had not heard of that before, but
Okay.
it's this crazy concept. You could buy a crappy house, put a bunch of hard work into it, and I'm a hard worker, and you could make like $10,000 when you sell it. And I was like, what kind of crazy money are you talking?
Yeah.
And if you flip 10 of those houses, you could save up $100,000. And that's enough to do a down payment on an apartment complex, I thought. And then I thought, well, I learned that that apartment complex could possibly spin off $10,000 a month for you. And then you can build your own freaking orphanages and you can live in Africa and you never have to ask for money again. And I was like, that's it. That's my plan. I'm going to do this. And so I Google what are the top universities that teach you how to flip houses.
Okay.
Do you know which one's the best one?
No, I
Real
didn't even know they taught you.
Well, real estate's such a big topic and it's the
Yeah.
common denominator of all wealthy people. Surely our college institutions would teach such a great thing. Yeah, no, there's nothing. And so I looked for 2 weeks and was like, this doesn't make any sense. But I came to the conclusion, we can't get a formal education. I guess I've got to go get my own education. And so I told my family that, and they decided to basically not talk to me for almost 2 years, except for to tell me that I was going to be a loser forever. And like, I'm like, guys, why do I need to go to college if they don't teach what I want to learn? Because I'm
Yeah.
very pro education. And they're like, well, it's just what you do. I'm like, why? And that's just what you do. That's the path to success. So
Yeah.
it's very popular now to not go to college, but it was not back then. And so I decided to go full swing. I've got to learn real estate investing so I can go back and make a difference for that little girl in Costa Rica. I
Mhm.
dedicated my life to it. And so I like, well, I got to find real estate investors to learn from. So I start calling the We Buy Houses signs.
Okay.
And I grew up homeschooled on a farm. We weren't allowed to watch TV, so I just am not in the habit of watching any TV. I still don't have like cable in my life or anything like that, if anybody does. And so I didn't know that there was a global economic meltdown going on in 2007 and 2008.
Yeah.
I thought I was a big failure at everything that I ever tried to touch. So yeah. Okay.
Oh,
Oh.
My gosh.
I ate lunch an hour ago. You're gonna have to cut the yawn.
You're
Hold
good.
it in, trying to hold it in. Mm. All right, so yes, I decided to call those We Buy Houses signs, and I said, "Can I work for you for free?" And they're like, "Get out of the market now! Don't get into real estate, it's stupid." I was like, "What? I'm reading all these books that say you can be a millionaire in 6 months."
Yeah.
Yeah, no. So I end up for about 3 years desperately trying to learn the business, but everything I tried failed. I became a loan officer because the guy who, ran that brokerage said he would teach me if I was a loan officer for him because he also flipped houses. Well, not one loan closed, but I was living on my credit cards waiting for some big commission to come in. So I end up in $45,000 of debt, which may have been 45 million for me at the time. Like that's how it felt. Crushing debt. The house that I bought, my roommates were never paying the rent, and everything I touched for 3 years failed. And so it just sucked. But I ended up waiting tables at night for the Cheesecake Factory. And I remember, I would study 12 hours a day and then try to do doubles at the Cheesecake Factory because no loans ever closed. And I remember one specific night, I like desperately needed $350 just to pay my mortgage minimum.
Hmm.
And I was like, God's gonna come through for me. And after a 9-hour shift, it was the worst in the history of my waitressing career. I made $7 in change in 9 hours. And I was
What?
like, okay, yeah, I just got stiffed so many times that
Oh
day.
my gosh.
It was terrible. And so I remember slapping my hands down on my apron, which was full of real estate books, and saying, God, why am I here? I'm smarter than this. And I heard loud and clear, because I want to bless you. I'm like, oh, really? I don't do that crap. So I went up to the host and said, please send me home. I've got, I need to go wallow. I have no idea how I'm going to pay my mortgage. This is like, it was so stressful. Took
Oh,
forever. He said, okay, fine, you can go. And right as he said that, these two guys and a girl walked in that front door of the Cheesecake Factory. And I said, please give me that table. And he was like, it's not your turn. I'm like, give me the table. So he finally gave me the table. And I remember the guy sitting farthest away from me in the booth had on his wedding ring finger a ring that had the logo of a house on it. And it said the Millionaires Club on the side. And I said, are you real estate investors? And they said, well, yes, we are. I said, I'm going to be a real estate investor someday. And they said, well, you're probably reading Cosmo Girl magazine. And I said, actually, I'm reading Success magazine. And they're like, well, you're probably listening to Hanson on CD in your car. And I said, actually, I'm listening to Think and Grow Rich, the audiobook. And they were just like very surprised that I
yeah.
was so self-taught, but they kept asking me like what I would now classify as like pretty sexist questions. And they were so impressed that this thing happened that I think is what Oprah means by there's no such thing as luck. It's simply hard work meeting opportunity. And
Yeah.
when those collided, the fact that I had spent 12 hours a day studying and wanted this more than anything, they said, well, we put on conferences and we'd love to have you out because we pretty much have no young people there and or women. So if you want to come represent, we'll let you come to our conference for free. And I was like, yes, I will be there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So at that conference, I remember how important it was to me to just be around people who were doing what I wanted to do. And that's something I want your listeners to really hear is there's so much power in proximity. And it's not like somebody's hooking you up or breaking a rule or even giving you money.
Hmm.
But what happens when you're in proximity to the people that you want to be like is your life changes because your subconscious now believes a new reality. And if I could just be in the room with people who did deals, maybe I would learn real estate because I read the books. Now it's time to like see it done.
Yeah.
And so I remember that I was in such a desperate financial position, but I had learned one thing over those 3 years. And it was that no matter what your situation is, find a way to still give first, find a way to be a blessing. And so I found the speakers and I said, can I take you to dinner? Can I just ask you real estate questions? And they said, yeah. Well, they invited like 20 people. And I was like, oh, I don't know how I'm going to afford this. So try not to stress out the whole dinner while they're like ordering wine and all this stuff. But the guy sitting farthest away from me on the table said, I've got all these deals stacking up that I just can't get to because I'm traveling the world selling courses. If only I had an assistant that I could teach how to run my deals, I could be doing my speaking thing. And I was like,
Sign me up, please.
I'll be your assistant. Yeah, I'll be your assistant. And he said, well, what assistant background do you have? And I was like, trying to extrapolate what you've learned from waitressing to be an assistant. I'm like, very attentive to your water needs. And uh, he ended up going against his mentor and all that stuff. I think I just was hungry. And when you're hungry, like people sense that you have character and you're like willing to work and all that stuff. So I accepted a job that was $600 less than the minimums on my credit cards. I rented my house out to these guys on Craigslist, and
Oh
I
man.
moved to this place called Nashville. He said I had to be out in 2 weeks or less, or he was hiring somebody else. And so I was like telling my family, this is my big break. This is God. This is like the doors finally opened after 3 years of suffering. I'm about to hit it big. Wrong. This was in 2009. Like the real estate market, everybody says 2007 and 8 were the worst. They were not. 2009 was the worst.
Oh man.
And the first month's rent check bounced from those guys that wrote me some false check in order to move into my house in Charlotte. And that was back when you'd believe your tenants, like, oh, my daughter's sick. Bull crap. They were doing drugs in the house and destroying the property, but I believed them and let them live there for free for 8 months, like
Oh my.
thinking they were really going to pay me.
Yeah.
I had a mortgage. I have this new job, and within 60 days of me moving to Nashville and putting it all on the line, they fired me and they said, oh, we don't have enough money to pay this position because nobody's buying anything in real estate right now. And so everything in my life just kept going to hell in a handbasket, honestly. But the day I got fired, the guy was putting on a little conference, and these two kind of crazy sounding dudes in the front said how many deals they were flipping and all this stuff. And I went up to them, I said, can I work for you for free? And so I moved into my car and I found a way to work for those guys for free, almost 18 to 21 hours a day. I've learned how to find deals. I learned how to find investors. I learned all this stuff. And they weren't like pumped to teach me. I just sit in the car and take notes on their problems, like while they were yelling at people on the phone, and then just try to figure out how to make their life easier so they would keep me around. And after 9 months of working for them for free, making them probably $400,000, I finally like asked to just make $5,000 as a partner on a project that made 45 grand. It took 3 days to think about it. And I said, the project makes 45 grand. I found it. I found all the money. I'm going to manage the crew. The real estate commission $6,000. I'll throw it in and only make $5,000 because I got my license. So I could help find them projects.
Okay.
And when that project closed, it was in a flood zone. It took forever. It was really it made a little less money than we planned, and so they only gave me $3,000.
Mm.
And of that $3,000, I remember my bank account was negative $836 that day. It was like, because I always paid my bills. I still honestly don't even know how I figured out how to do that, but I always paid my bills. But that day it was like the lowest of the bottom of the bottom. And I spent the other 2,000 sending them and their wives on a cruise to say thank you for being the first people to ever believe in me. And for your listeners out there, what does it take to be successful? It takes finding people who are where you want to be, finding a way to create meaningful value in their life. Not, I'm going to do this nice thing so you teach me and I use you and run off and become your competition. That's not the point.
Yeah.
The point is, how do you actually meaningfully serve their purpose and make their life easier, and they'll keep you around. Nobody owes you freaking anything. And then with gratitude and respect, if somebody takes the time to impart to you, like, be grateful. Because a lot of people are like, well, are you not mad that they didn't pay you for 9 months? I was like, no, I owe them everything. I owe them everything. Yes, they were tough on me, but I am so grateful that somebody gave me a chance,
Yeah.
because I don't look the part. In the southern part of America, like, people don't believe in girls to do construction right off the bat. Why? Because they haven't seen us do it.
Yeah.
Of course, they're not going to believe in anything they haven't seen.
Hmm.
So for people listening that might not be the right color, age, gender, whatever, like, don't whine about the fact people don't believe in you. Give people a reason to believe in whatever you are. Because
Exactly.
you're going to have to work 10 times harder, but you're normalizing it for
Hmm.
the next girl or the next whatever colored person. Like, until they've seen it done, humans won't believe it can be done. And that's
Exactly.
just how our wiring system is. So yeah, that's how I got started in real estate. But
Yeah, that's insane. And it all started with that 12-year-old little girl with the
absolutely.
passion behind it, and you never let go of that. That's insane because most people at 12 aren't passionate about really anything other than probably going outside and playing, or nothing like that big, and knowing what they want to do for the rest of their life.
Well,
Uh,
that's why I tell parents, like, we're doing our first I have a Force for Good entrepreneur mastermind. And the most powerful thing I think you can do for your youth around 12 years old is to take them on a mission trip. Like, so we're putting on a mission trip, and it's not like we're going around with Bibles and preaching at people. We're going to Honduras. We're going to drive through the garbage heaps where there's thousands of families living and eating out of the garbage heaps. And then we're going to take the group after they see that and meet these kids that are their age living in that situation. We're going to take them to the communities that help those people pull their lives together with dignity through job creation and, again, meaningful housing that they got to be part of, where they learn skills building, half of it with the nonprofit partnership. So we're showing them, we're not doing like poverty tourism. It's go see and experience how rough life can be, and then see that your life can be so impactful if you
mm,
choose to have some level of intentionality in your life. Like, instead of spending your time drifting or constantly escaping with video games and Instagram and drugs and alcohol and all the bull crap,
yeah.
recognize the access you have by the country you were even born into. I don't care how poor you're born. The fact you have any rights, and the fact you have something you can Google on the internet, like,
Yeah.
that is so, you have such an opportunity. If you just choose to execute on it, you can make a way for other people who don't have that. And I'm not saying to ever hand out money. I'm saying to go create jobs, to take the clean water solution to places people are dying, millions of people dying every year. Like, we as humanity have figured out these breakthroughs, and it just needs to go more places. And I'm seeing the most capable and qualified people in the world throwing their freaking lives away and living depressed. That's insane to me. We don't have time to be depressed, and we
Yeah.
won't be depressed if we're living our calling. We won't be depressed.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think that's something in the US we kind of take it for advantage. It's a superpower of the freedom that we get, but use it as a superpower to help.
Yeah.
And I mean, not everybody in the country has the same superpower, but use your superpower and make good in the world for whatever you're passionate about, and outside the country as well.
Yeah. And if you can give, I call, going to the front line of need. It can be in America, it doesn't matter, but find a way to go to the front line of need, because serving in those situations, hands on, not just writing checks, is a way that to give yourself and or your youth a perspective that gives you an edge. Like, when I started going on those mission trips really young, I was never tempted to do freaking drugs or like anything, because I just knew my life actually mattered. And it's not like I think I'm so powerful. It's like, if I chose to do something, I could help someone,
Yeah.
and not just doing whatever feels fun in this moment or whatever my friends think is cool. I didn't even care about that stuff, because I had in what we call now is that aerial perspective. that big picture view on that whole picture of your life, saying, this is bigger than me.
Mm-hmm.
What part do I get to play in it? And that's where your fulfillment comes from, is actually doing something about the thing you're passionate about. Not just like, it's just amazing to me how powerless people think they are. And it's pretty easy to make a life-changing impact.
Exactly. And I like how you brought up like the social media, video games type of escape. And it's so everybody's so quickly to escape, stroll on TikTok for 4 or 5 hours in a night when you really could be doing something else more productive that could be making a difference. Or even if it's not making a difference in someone else's life, you're making your life better so you can get to the point to
Absolutely.
make someone else's life better.
Yeah. How can you become physically fit enough to go anywhere you're called to go? How can you become so educated that you've learned all the solutions that have been figured out and you just take them more places? How can you start something? And or there's so much to do, and people are like, I have a lot of free time. Like, tell me, because I got stuff we can do.
Yeah.
And but real estate, after I did that first deal with Polly, that next year I had become the biggest rehabber in Nashville.
Okay.
And I blew up because I'd finally, I worked to learn, not just to earn. And I think that's really important for the listeners to know, is, again, this entitlement bullcrap that this next generation has is going to get you nowhere. You can whine and fuss all day, but it's not going to really make you long-term successful. And I'm not saying it's hard work. It is. But most of the time it's hard because you don't know what you're doing. If you start at this level, you only have to it's not that hard. And if you start at this level, it's just different. I didn't grow up around anybody with money. My parents didn't teach me how to do anything with real estate. It was just unfamiliar. And so it was harder for me. But whatever you want to accomplish, you have to find a way, not an excuse, because you're always going to have a societally acceptable excuse available to you if you look hard enough for one. But at the end of your life, are you looking back at your life saying, that's a life that I'm proud of? Or like Les Brown says, on your deathbed, you're going to be surrounded by the dreams, the hopes, the ventures that you were meant to bring to life. And if they're standing around you with angry eyes saying, we came to you and only you could bring us life, but now we must go to the grave with you forever. Like, it's not like you need to walk around with a bunch of shoulds and stress, but it's freeing yourself enough to know that this too shall pass.
Yeah.
It's one chance. We're gonna die. So what do we really want to do? What do we really feel passionate about? And how do we start spending our time there versus escaping?
Yeah, exactly. I love how you said work to learn and not work to earn, because in the end, yes, you want to make more money to get to the spot where you want in life. But when you're working to learn, you're going to end up be making more money and getting faster than just working when you're just working to earn. And rehabbing or house flipping is such a big thing right now. Wasn't when you started, because it probably wasn't on TV like it is now.
Yeah.
Every other show is about house flipping. And I think most people just see that and they're like, oh, I'm going to make a lot of money. Let me just flip. Let me do this. Let me do this. And that's when you get the botched houses and stuff. They're not learning on the process. And in the end, costing them more and more money, putting them back and back, further back and back on their goals. And really, that's when you get into that rut and you get stuck and you can't get out.
Exactly. And nobody can ever take that education away from you. And what
Yeah.
I did that was super smart for our newbies listening to this is I did all the work, or I would follow along, do as much work as I can. And then I would try to do all the work and just have somebody I could call for answers if it got really hard, and then let them make all the money.
Yeah.
But because I actually believe in myself enough to say, this isn't my last deal, I need to learn in a safe environment, because real estate mistakes are big. And when you start with nothing and you're living in your car, you can't just lose $100,000. You can't.
Mm-mm.
You can't just lose 500 grand there, 60 grand here, 80 grand there. But those are the numbers you have to be able to stomach. And until you have any extra, you have got to do well. And so I'm so grateful for not only that 9 months, but every time I went into a new asset class, from apartments to new construction to land developments, like all that stuff. The only one I didn't observe for free was islands. That one I just did, but it was a really smart thing that I did, but everybody always called me stupid and crazy because it takes a tremendous amount of effort, years of my life to work on something I make nothing on. But I'm like, you can't ever take away that education.
No.
Now I know how to do it. And if you were a douchebag to me the whole time I partnered with you, I probably won't bring you in on the next deal. But if you were really nice, like, let's go do 1,000 together, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when did this island come into the picture?
So I became the one of the biggest rehabbers in Nashville, and then kept going back and forth to Africa, and seeing that in the process of, I'm gonna try to tell the story short. In the process of developing orphanages, we found these communities that were actually selling their kids because they had no other resources. They're selling their kids for $25 into sex traffickers' hands. And
Holy crap.
yeah, and they had no other opportunity. So even in the development of the orphanage near that town, all these businesses moved in around our orphanage site because they're like, oh, the Americans are investing there. And so they thought it was going to be like some really super hot spot. And I'm like, we're building an orphanage. They're like, we don't care if the Americans are around, this land is valuable. So all these jobs and businesses moved in, and then those families no longer had to sell their kids. And so I saw how real estate development created economic opportunity that stopped sex trafficking at its root, which is amazing.
Yeah.
These kids didn't want to sell their kids. They literally knew that all 9 kids are going to die if they don't sell one. Horrible. And so, after seeing that real estate development was the key, I went back to America and started practicing on harder and harder neighborhoods, like
Okay.
ones that were more similar to the kind of desperation I was seeing overseas. High crime, no jobs, no investment. I'm best known for Stab City, Murder Acre. Those were like the places I picked up to develop myself, and I moved into them to figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
And so you learn a lot when you live in a neighborhood. I'm like, and here's where the drug dealers are, and I'm just going to go buy those houses and move them out. And so that's what I did. And I learned, if you can get rid of the crime, then the area has a chance to change.
Yeah.
There's a difference between gentrification and mindful revitalization. And
How did you get rid of crime in those communities, though?
buy those houses.
Oh, okay.
Offer them something they cannot refuse. And most of the time crime happens if a landlord doesn't care.
Okay.
Or, it's somebody's son who has inherited the house. And a lot of times, it's really cool that the crime, when they lose their network, they actually have a chance to change too. Because we had a guy who tried to change before he moved, and he ended up getting like stabbed and stuff. So, they cannot stop selling drugs until they are out of that community. And so that's the only way to do it. Obviously calling in and actually reporting things, and like having a standard, and cleaning up the abandoned houses that a lot of the crime's happening in, and putting in street lights, and like cleaning up the garbage, raising the standard of living. You're not moving out old ladies and people live there for 30 years. You're not doing that. You're literally taking crime and why people feel that no one cares about this area, so I can do whatever I want. Like, that's no longer the standard. People care about this neighborhood, and you're going to act right. So
exactly.
So I came back to America and started practicing how to create this hope and hopeless places concept through opportunity creation, trying to raise up the local community. So I started doing this urban revitalization, and started practicing it more and more places, harder and harder locations throughout the whole southeast of America. And I got really good. I won Forbes' 6th fastest growing woman-owned company in the world, and Fortune #3 male or female fastest growing urban company in the nation, and just a bunch of really cool awards. But it was never about the awards. It was about learning how to transition regions. And I said, okay, God, how do I go from doing this here to back to Kenya? Like,
Yeah.
because I was on one road one time in Kenya. It was there, 8 hours long, and it was just slum after slum after slum. And one of the slums was a 2 million person slum. Like, how can you ever put a dent in the level of need that is out there? And my heart just hurt. And I heard loud and clear, start on islands. And I was like, islands, what? And so the concept was, how do you help people who have this access that I've been talking about this whole time, like find their purpose, find center, understand they can be a force for good, understand that your life matters, and truly find the meaning of life. And so that's what I built here. And so you bring people in who are hungry to change their life, and you hand them that change.
Yeah.
You let them find themselves versus escape. That's the difference, is instead of escaping, you're finding. And it sounded like a weird idea. Like, how can you do that? But we did it. It took a long time. The island itself has its own crazy story of getting hit by the strongest hurricane in the history of the Atlantic, and then trying to launch during COVID. And like it, I will not tell you the story on here. I will make you come to the island to hear it from me. But after overcoming everything, it has become, honestly, internationally known as a place of healing and
Yeah.
a place to find center. And you're going to get what you needed and you didn't even know. And my favorite thing that we do here is 4 times a year, we have a week called Heal the Heroes. And that's one of my nonprofit initiatives. And anybody listening to this call can nominate a deserving veteran and or first responder who is struggling with suicide, addiction, meaninglessness, hopelessness, all that stuff. Somebody who's just really PTSD, TBI, you name it.
Yeah.
Send them away. And what we do is it's all free for them. We pay for their flights, everything. They get to join their platoon, and it's 25 or 26, either all guys or all girls. And they start their week of healing on the island. And it's so cool because they have so many skills. Like my husband is a veteran, special forces, in the military for 20 years, 10 years, Green Beret. And honestly, we built this program after watching his problems. I was like, wait a minute,
Yeah.
this hot, qualified, he's got more than $10 million of government training in him. You're good at everything. This elite literally is suicidal. Like, what the crap? You know how much need there is for you? Do you know how many missions that nobody else can accomplish? Do you know that there's kids being trafficked that need to be rescued, and we can teach you how to do that? And so until he understood by being connected to missions, he did not see a continued purpose for his life. And that is very common.
Mhm.
From first responders who experience so much firsthand trauma, or military who were told this is your mission your whole life, and now your mission feels like it got ripped away, when really we all need a mission and a purpose, but we're used to creating our own. They were just handed one their whole life. Like, that's the only
Yeah.
difference. And so when it gets ripped off, like, that meaninglessness is just glaring. So anyway, they start here on the island, and they end up being with us for a whole year. But that week on the island is like so transformational, so amazing. Really, everybody that's ever come through here with addiction has like been beating it. They've either fully beat it or they are beating it. And my nonprofit is Aerial Recovery, does missions full time. Like, so we train either really amazing volunteers, medical people, or the veterans and first responders to be what we've named humanitarian special operators, to go do these missions all over the world and actually rescue kids and do disaster relief. And we've saved over 7,200 people in the last 18 months, which has been just all these guys that, again, wanted to end their life. And now they're leading these missions and have a reason to live and are happy and restoring their marriages and like the daddy they always wanted to be. And so it's so rewarding, and
Oh
it's
yeah.
so cool how, to my real estate owners out there, if you dig deep, like what is the thing you want to do the most in the world, and how can my real estate assets help me have the vehicle to get that done? And it can either be by donating checks to Aerial Recovery, or it could be you can be donating, or you can be utilizing your space as a force for good. Overall, this entire island is a force for good in what it does every day, but it's got its extreme things that it does too, where we actually get to donate those weeks to truly saving lives. I'd actually argue that we save lives every week, because when people find hope and a reason to live, they can overcome anything. So
Oh yeah.
it's super fun. When I married Jeremy in last January is when I met him, really is when my nonprofit impact dreams, like I didn't know. And that's how cool God is. Like you can have this vision your whole life, but he was the key to getting to do those missions.
Yeah.
Again, instead of him getting knocked out of the game with his struggles, because he'll tell his story, addiction of all kinds, and then like all the things that happened to him when he was retiring, like the pills they just hand you and the meaninglessness. Like the fact he chose to overcome those things, we said, how many more other people need this help?
Yeah.
And what can they do with their lives if they don't knock themselves out of the game? And so it's been a wild ride. There's so many hard parts that we don't have time to share,
Yeah.
just attacks from crazy people who want to destroy you for even trying to do good in the world, haters, you know, just overall being even a woman in these multiple male dominated industries wasn't easy, but I'm never going to
Mhm.
let that be. I don't even want to talk about it, because I
Yeah.
don't want it to be a thing. I don't want a special handout. I will work 10 times harder so it's easier for the next girl. Um,
Yeah, and I
but
think when you talk about it, it waters what you did down.
yeah,
It makes it less like, I don't know. I grew up in an area where we're a lot more fortunate. I saw all kinds of stuff. And I just came from a corporation that had a lot of females that were um heads, and I didn't see anything different with that. But when you start talking about it, you notice it's different. And like people like kind of call it out. I'm like, it's not different. It's just another human being that's worked their butt off and got to where they are.
yeah. And that's the way it should be, you
Yeah.
know. And that's, you were raised right, and you had good exposure to things, and you had people who were successful as great leaders in those places, and that's what it takes to make it more normal until
Yeah.
it's no longer even thought of.
Yeah.
And that's I think, the rise of women does not require the fall of man.
Yeah.
And some people can get lost in ever trying to raise up a people group having to push the other one down, and it's like, no, just shine your light, keep sharing your greatness. Don't ever feel like you have to attack to raise up, but
Yeah.
also be aware there's some idiots out there, and that's just not your problem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I first want to, a side note from what you just said, I want to thank your husband for his service. So let him know. But even like when you said you're saving lives every week, even if they stumble upon your social media account and they see all that you're doing on your, it's the aerial recovery group and then the community, right? Or global community.
No, it's just Aerial Recovery Group now. It used to be
Okay.
Global Community. We changed the name now that we've got it more veteran led. We changed the names.
Gotcha. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, even if they see that, that's life changing. They know there's someone out there that's like them and has come out on the other side.
Yep. Absolutely. And that's the thing is, like we were talking about, how important it is to be in the room.
Hmm.
When I spent so much money just to go to Richard Branson's island. I spent $50,000 a year just to be in a room with a serial entrepreneur. And I started at 24 years old. And what that did for me, because I didn't have free 50 grand, I figured out how to have 50 grand so I could be around greatness. And being around an island owner, going to his island, listening, and they didn't even have like a bunch of meaningful events. I just wanted to be in the room if I was invited. And that alone, what I didn't realize, put that in my subconscious too, is like island ownership is possible. It is possible. I bought one 4 years later. I bought an island, 28 years old.
28. Holy crap.
28 is when I first got it. And it's like, so if I could encourage your listeners to do anything, it's find a way to get in the room. Don't do anything immoral, but like find a way to get in the room, people you want to be like. And until you can be, listen to everything those people put out. Read their books, listen to their podcasts. The fact that you're already listening to this podcast shows that you're on track to be successful. Like, very brilliant of you to be investing your time and energy improving your life by listening to this. So but if you can go to people's events, like go to their events, find a way to serve, like your life will shift so much faster in a matter of days by like being in those immersive environments than just reading books. But books is still a great way to start.
Absolutely. Well, Britnie, thank you so much. I know we went over time, but I love this whole conversation, and I think people are gonna absolutely love this episode. Excited to get this out, and I want to end with where people could find you on social media and websites. I'll have it tagged in the caption below and in the podcast description, but I just want to whoever's listening in the car know where they could follow you.
Yeah. So personally, my handle is at Britnie Turner on everything. Britney spelled weird, so it's pretty easy to find. It's 1TNIE. And then it's BritnieTurner.com can lead you to all the resources I'm about to share. My mastermind, which is Force for Good entrepreneurs that have dedicated their lives, businesses, and resources to being able to make a meaningful difference in their one chance on earth, is GForce Mastermind, Instagram handle and .com. And then the nonprofit is at Aerial Recovery Group, and that's Instagram as well as YouTube. And the website is aerialrecovery.org. And then the island is at the Aerial BVI. And Aerial is that big picture, AERIAL. So I look forward to meeting those of you who do end up coming out to any of our island events. I host the Elevate Summits myself. And if you are a Force for Good entrepreneur, but you want to scale to have bigger impact by walking in even greater abundance, that's what GForce is about. And if you want to make a meaningful difference or nominate a hero, go to our nonprofit website because we are happy to take them.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Britnie. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you for hopping on.
Thank you for having me.